thin team. You continue to absorb injuries.
Yep.
So where are you in terms of some of those injuries, and how do you manage linebacker, safety, all the ones where it's really, really thin now?
Yeah, it's thin. Yeah, but here's the thing, Greg. Like, and I said this, and I don't know if I said it to you all or the team, is like nobody feels sorry for us. We got a thin roster at some spots, and I really think it's not just a West Virginia problem. I think you look across the board, it's probably an issue for a lot of teams. Just the old days of building a roster and having depth at every single position and being 3 deep. That's what you wanted to be. You wanted to be 3 deep across the board at all your scholarship positions, and that's just not going to be the reality anymore. It's not, and we can gripe and complain about it, but it does no good. It's not. You're going to have the guys that, especially at mid and skill positions, that don't get immediate results, then they're going to look elsewhere. And like I said, I don't think that's just a West Virginia issue. I think it's an issue across college football. And so what you're going to have, you're going to have veterans and you're going to have really young guys. You know what I mean? And you better get your really young guys ready to play. And so, we have some depth concerns at safety and at linebacker, but we're going to line up and play. Josh Chandler will play. Deshaun Stevens will play more. Scotty Young, he finished the game playing linebacker, and I thought Scotty Young played really well in the game. He's one of the few guys that I would say, man, he played well in the game on Saturday. So he'll move down, and we'll play more like we can play some dime package with him in the game. St. McLeod's going to play more to relieve Jackie Matthews at Spear. He played in the game on Saturday and did some. I like his. You talk about projections. I like how he projects, and he's shown that he's ready to play. And then we're kind of competing this week to see if Davis Mallinger or Caleb Coleman, one of those two guys, will get some reps at safety.
Either of those younger guys. Are you pushing their red shirt out?
No. St. McLeod's already played enough games. The goal is to redshirt Davis and Caleb. I think I don't have my games played list, but I think they have one of them has 2, one of them has 1. I think. Now I got to go back and look at that. Maybe each has 1. But Extry's out. He's out for the year. He had surgery and lower body, and he's out. Lance Dixon, I would say, is highly questionable for the game. I'm not ruling him out yet, but I'd say he's questionable. Anybody else in? Sean Ryan, I think he'd be questionable. He didn't finish the game. I'm cautiously optimistic that he'll play. Caden Prather at that receiver position, he's the other guy that I thought played well on Saturday. And you could see it coming, and he got some balls thrown to him, and it's the hard thing about playing wide out. A lot of things got to go right for you to get the ball. And he's really played better, and I felt like he's coming. And I think, he's another guy you talk about projecting well. I think he's going to be a big-time player, and you saw some of that on Saturday. Anybody else injury-wise? Garrett, I think he practiced yesterday. It was the first day he practiced. Yep, first day he practiced, and he'll be available on Saturday unless he hits any unless he gets goes in reverse on anything. They didn't practice at all last week.
Question, but if you get to that point where a guy is at his 4-game limit or whatever, but you're at a spot in the game where you say, man, I think if we play this guy, he could be the difference between win or lose, is that ever a consideration to hold him out, or is it always we're going to play, we're going to try to win today?
No, I think you try to take the emotions out of it, and as far as, so you just kind of plan it. And so, like if you were going to my desk, I've got a games played for all those guys that have a red shirt, eligible for a red shirt. I've got a games played list. And so what we do is we go through and we say, okay, hey, this guy's going to be live this weekend and this guy's not. And if you notice on the sideline, those guys that aren't going to be live, we don't even give them a helmet. And so we kind of take the emotions out because you don't ever want to put that kid in that situation, And so that's how we handle it, right, wrong, or indifferent.
Your reaction to the Kansas game last week, just watching it, I mean, there was some unusual things that
I would say credit like Kansas. I think anytime those kind of wins happen is you got to make an extraordinary amount of plays. And Kansas made an extraordinary amount of plays. Whether it was at quarterback, on defense, they just made a lot of plays. And sometimes you have those kind of days, And I think when big upsets, and I just say from a point differential, a favorite. I'm not, I'm not necessarily saying that's a huge upset or it's not. That's not for me to determine. But I'm saying anytime you have one of those that's a 20-plus where there's an upset, there's always a bunch of people that make plays. And then Kansas just made a bunch of plays, and, the tight end on the 2-point conversion, the tight end when they were going the other direction rose up and made a humongous play on 3rd down. And you're talking about guys that hadn't done that. It's a credit to them. Lance is really good coach. We don't play him till next week, but we played him in a bowl game, and he's really good coach. He's been through these rebuilds before, which I think matters. So he's done it at Buffalo. So he's you could tell he's not overly frustrated. He kind of handles it, and he's had his kids ready to play. Because we've seen Kansas. Is this the third? I think this is the third opponent we've played right after Kansas. You know what I mean? And so you see it. And, those guys they're playing extremely hard. They're well coached. I don't think I finished my thought. We played them in a bowl game, my last game at Troy, and I was really impressed that whole week. Now that was later in their tenure, and they had some NFL players, but they've been well coached. They've been in a lot of games. You can see them getting better as the year went on. But they made, if you go back and look at 50-50 plays that they made. Ton of 50-50 plays. And then defensively too, they got their hands on a lot of balls, and so that's what I noticed in that game. And sometimes you have those and it's well, Texas didn't play hard. That's not what I see. You know what I mean? I don't turn on the film, and trust me, that's what I was hoping to see. You know what I mean? I was hoping to see that. But when I turn on the film, I don't see a Texas team that's not playing hard. I see a team that's flying around. I see a team that you can tell the staff is still working extremely hard because they got 4th and 5th year seniors that are still playing hard. You know what I mean? And on offense and defense. And Kansas just made a bunch of plays.
Is it hard to evaluate though? Particularly some of the unusual things that Kansas did that kind of going against the grain against some of their things.
I think that a lot of stuff that going for it on 4th and 1, or the 2-point conversion to win, and I think, and I don't know Lance well enough to know how he thinks, but I listen to the announcer, right, and so it's easy for him to criticize, correct, but I think as you're building a program, you try to make a point, and here's the other thing: the analytics tell you to go for it right there. Because if you get a first down on 4th and inches or 4th and 1, whatever it was, the ball game's over. You take a knee and you run out of there. You know what I mean? So the analytics tell you to do that. And then the 2-point conversion, he just went for it. So but outside of those, it wasn't like it was a bunch of they didn't trick play them. They did, you know what I mean? It wasn't like they took an inordinate amount of risk. They made a bunch of plays, and credit to them.
You mentioned before about the rosters, at the different age of football. Now, you don't have very many seniors who sign here, and are here on senior day coming up. But it's been a very, very strange route for those that did.
Yeah. It's hard for me to keep up. I was telling Monty walking in here, and I was and I don't even know for sure who's all walking and who's not walking yet. It's up to them. As far as, but it's hard. We only really have 3. I guess we have 4 super seniors.
Changing coaching, COVID, extra year.
It's been a trying time for them. Yeah, it's been a trying time, and there's a lot of guys that didn't start their career here that are going that are seniors now too. I'll tell you, it's confusing about who's a senior and who's not. It really is. I've just gone to it with guys that have no chance at eligibility and those who have potential eligibility left. You know what I mean? That's kind of the way I've been thinking about it. And so we're giving them the option if they walk. I'm not really pressing them to make decisions, final decisions, whether they're coming back or not, just because I don't think there's any reason to put stress on them right here with 2 weeks left.
Do you have that conversation though at some
point? At some point we will. Yeah, at some point we will. And I think it comes down to, last year's senior class, several of those guys could have came back, but a lot of them didn't necessarily have NFL futures, and they were kind of tired. It's hard. It really is. Everybody sees all the perks and rewards and stuff, but it's a lot of work. and a lot of those guys had already graduated. A lot of them had already had their masters, and they went about their life, And but no, you have discussions, whether it's, hey, we want you to come back, we really would like for you to come back, or then you have the NFL discussion, which is very similar to what you have with the junior, and you take the emotions out as a coach and you just present the information, because the days of the end, really, they ask questions here, but the way the NFL process works now, and we let everybody in, right? We let them in all the time, and we have scouts almost every single practice, and they cross-check, and they have their area scouts, and they'll ask, but there's so much information now. They know that sometimes we're answering questions with our heart because they're ours. It's no different with your own kids. Like we're asking, they're asking us questions, and we're asking with our heart because they're our guys. And so, we have no say NFL. You know what I mean? Like we really don't. But what we try to do is get quality information and just present it. Hey, this is what it looks like. Hey, they see you as an undrafted free agent. They see you as a draft pick. They see you, and you present it, and the player and their family make the decision. But as far as I don't think senior day, I don't guess there's any rule why you can't do it twice. You know what I mean? So I don't see any reason why there's not a lot of. I wouldn't take a whole bunch of credence in who walks and who doesn't walk. I guess that's what I'm trying to say.
You mentioned about the difference now and not being able to build a 2 deep or 3 deep across the board.
Yep.
Is the same thing true for the number of seniors, having a big senior class? And if you can't get those, which looks like it's the way of the future, how do you address that in terms of leadership, in terms of, locker room?
That's a good question. I think it takes a while to really establish leadership, and I think that it's hard. It really is in team sports now to develop real quality leadership, and it's I don't really have a thumb on exactly why, but it is, that's something that as coaches, regardless of sport, because coaches talk a lot because you go through the same thing, you deal with same issues, and it's whether it's in your sport or another sport, and that's just a trend. It's really it's hard to develop really selfless leadership anymore, but I think it's still important. It's still important, and the roster issues, and I really hadn't thought about it as tied to leadership as far as the roster issues and I'll say this too, we got plenty of spots, so whether guys come back or not, it won't affect how many we can take. Okay, I think that's something I think it's important for y'all to know. We'll be able to sign whatever the max number we can sign is, which I think is 32, maybe. Yeah, 32. So we'll be able to do that regardless of what these guys make their decision on, whether they're coming back or not. The roster, what's hard on the planning piece is you used to be able to say, okay, usually during your bye week you lay out and say, okay, this is what my 22 roster is going to look like. This is my 23. So you're really playing out your recruiting number. Hey, I'm going to finalize my 22 spots, the ones that are open here. This is all right. I want to finalize those, and let's look at the head of 23. We'll start making our 23 spots. This is exactly what we want. What's made it difficult now is you're always playing catch up, because you're always going to have. There's always, when guys transfer, for the most part, you got a pretty good idea they're going to leave. All right, because they're not playing or they're malcontent, you can kind of feel it. But there's always going to be one or two that you didn't really see, and those are usually in critical areas. So you always got to kind of hold a couple back, and I just started knows head coach discretion. We'll sign whatever number and this many head coach discretion. Anybody else?
With these numbers, last game, receptions, yardage, touchdowns, that's cool, but the times they threw at him, 24 times.
Shaking now.
Worthy.
Yeah,
Does that say? I mean, he's good, obviously, but does that alert you at all for game planning this week?
Yeah, we have to. We have to know where he's at without question. And how many do you have? 24.
I think I read 23 or 24.
Yeah, it was in the 20s for sure. And they did a nice job. They got him the ball in the speed sweeps. They do a really good job of tagging him in the run game. And so where Thompson's got an opportunity to get him the ball, and Sark, he did a really good job of moving him around, right? And they've had, and I think I'm correct here, they've had a lot of different injuries and some issues at wideout as far as numbers wise. And as a play caller, it sounds kind of weird, but sometimes it's easier to call plays when you're thinned out at the receiver position, because you can just call for one guy rather than thinking about getting multiple 3 or 4 or 5 guys the ball, which sometimes gets a little muddy. He did a really good job. He has great speed. He changes direction without slowing down, which to me is an elite talent. And then he's a plus guy after the catch. And he's thin in stature, but he runs like he finishes runs, and he's a big time player. Like he's worthy of all the accolades he's gotten thus far in his freshman year. All right, thank you all.